Okay, we're gonna take a couple questions on loneliness from good old Reddit,
Okay, cool.
and maybe I can start by just reading them out loud, and then we can talk a little bit because I think there's a lot of awesome wisdom to share. So this first question is from a user named Feel the Moment is his username, and the title of his question is, "Why does it feel so hard to find real friends? I'm feeling stuck and alone. I've always been the quiet, shy kid, but lately loneliness has become overwhelming. Even at school, I feel disconnected, unsure of who to talk to and how to fit in. I've been on meds for depression and OCD, and while things are getting better, I still find myself stuck on weekends with no one to hang out with and no one reaching out. Online, it's the same story. I'm always the one reaching out, only to be met with short replies or excuses. I just want genuine friends, people I can feel close to. Why does it feel so impossible?" Okay, so David, what do you think? Is this person doomed to a lifetime of loneliness no matter what they do?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, well, we were hoping to helpful. Next question.
Next question. So, sorry, we shouldn't be disrespectful, but certainly loneliness is a real thing, and I have a few things to say about it. First of all, this is a commercial moment because I've written a whole book on that called Intimate Connections, and it's about how to date, get people chasing after you if you're in the dating game, and also how to make friends and connections with other people. And I would really recommend that book because the first part of it is how to find happiness when you're alone. And if you feel like you need other people to feel happy and fulfilled, then you'll be needy. And it's the same if it's making friends or if it has to do with dating.
And that neediness is a huge turnoff.
Yeah,
But
right.
potential friends or dates or whatever.
Force people to reject you, and it's like an animal magnetism thing. It's like certain animals can sense if you're like them, if you're loving, or if you're afraid, if you're
Hmm.
and they growl if they sense that you're afraid,
Yeah.
and that type of thing. And so learning to feel happy when you're alone is the first thing, and there's a lot of specific techniques in that book, like the deserted island fantasy and imagining you're alone on a deserted island and that have enough food there. There's water and fish and stuff, but how are you going to deal with your feelings? And so that's point number one. Um, Point number two, and I mean we could go into these in detail. This could be a whole 10-week course of us,
Yeah.
but is that your thoughts create all of your moods, and so if you're feeling lonely and undesirable and kind of inadequate, the whole thing of cognitive therapy, as well as my new TEAM-CBT, is to write your negative thoughts down on a piece of paper and identify the distortions in them and talk back to them
Mm.
in the way you would talk to a loving friend. Like you may be telling yourself that you're inferior, you're inadequate, and
Yeah.
giving yourself a lot of negative messages.
Yeah, and I can really relate to the guy who wrote this question because I remember when I was in school, I had trouble fitting in. I remember there sometimes like a kid would tell jokes and all the other kids would laugh, and I would laugh, but I didn't understand the joke, and I was just laughing to fit in.
That's sucky. Yeah, it's even worse is when you're telling a joke and nobody learns. That often happens
But
to me.
I think when you do feel a little bit like sticking out, you could kind of tell yourself, "I'll never figure out how to make friends. I'll be alone forever." And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's those kinds of messages that are can be so upsetting.
Oh, yeah. I had a little story in Intimate Connections, that just came back to me. When I was an Amherst College freshman, we had I always want to be a writer, and now I get to write books on depression and anxiety, and I get to tell stories of people I've worked with, and it's really fun. But I always dreamt of, to learn to be a really good writer, and we had a writing class freshman year at Amherst. We had to write 3 papers a week the first semester and 2 papers a week the second semester. And all the professor ever did was to dump on us and tell us how awful our writing was, and the message was, "You are the voice in your writing, and the voice in your writing sucks." And they were right because everyone was trying to impress the professors, and we just got shot down right and left
Uh,
for doing that. But I had one thing I was writing. I had a little notebook I bought in the drugstore, and so it was my personal journal, and I wrote down just things that would come into my mind.
Yeah.
And just personal stuff, and I carried that around with me. And when I would eat in Valentine's Hall, we would, put our stuff up on a rack, and hang our coat up and eat. And one day when I came back, that journal was missing,
Oh no.
and I really freaked out and panicked. Somebody's going to get my journal and read about, my
Your inner life. Yeah.
yeah, and writing about dreams and things. And, it was just spontaneous stuff. It wasn't any effort to fix anything up. And eventually, after a week or so, I got over my anxiety and humiliation and kind of forgot about it as best I could. But I was intensely embarrassed and ashamed. And then one day, miraculously, when I went to hang up my coat in Valentine's Hall, there was my journal there on the pretty much close to where I had left it. And I said, "Oh my God!" And I grabbed it and opened it up, and there was a note and said, "Forgive me for taking your journal," but I couldn't stop reading it. I couldn't put it down.
Oh.
And I'm so lonely, and this was so helpful to me, and I hope I can find a friend like you
Oh.
who I can be really open with.
Oh wow.
And I couldn't believe it. All the things I must have written 150 papers my freshman year, and every sentence of every one of them was just crushed sarcastically by the professor, and happened to everyone. So it was a good thing. I mean, I learned about tone, and how pompous I can be and others people can be. And but the one thing that I never was trying on, that I didn't want anyone to see, was the only thing that somebody found worthwhile. And it was so interesting. What it has to do with, really, we used to see this in psychodrama a lot when I was a medical student, and people would kind of open up, and I can remember once they were confronting this young woman, a Stanford student, and real attractive and real smart, and but she seemed a little kind of phony, and she didn't have any friends, and she was complaining, and they started confronting her, and then she finally burst out into tears and said, I'm just so lonely, and I'm so ashamed of being lonely, and I've been trying to hide it from everybody." And that was her moment of suddenly people went and embraced her and grabbed her and threw her up in the air and, handed her around like that. And just her tears just turned into joy. And her error was an error that I used to make a lot, and I've made throughout my entire life, sometimes just thinking, I have to impress people to get them to like me. And just when you're being open and vulnerable, that's sometimes when you find what you've been looking for, the intimacy, the care, the love, the friendship that's been missing.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that would be helpful to anyone. It probably sounds like an elderly man bullshitting or something, but to me, it's been a pretty powerful principle.
Like the person who's writing this might think about, going to a couple kids in their school and say, "Hey, do you ever find it hard to make friends?" And maybe don't go straight to the most popular kids with that, but go to some other people who look a little bit lonely. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, that reminds me, when I was in 4th grade,
Mhm.
I realized that I didn't have any friends,
Uh-huh.
and I was a little maybe like you.
Yeah.
And, I would often get elected class president because I was smart, but I never had any friends.
Yeah.
And Valentine's, or no, Halloween
Yeah.
was coming up,
Yeah.
and, I didn't get any invitations to any Halloween's party.
Mhm.
And so one of my older sisters said, "Well, why don't you have a Valentine's party?
Or a Halloween party.
Yeah, a Halloween party.
Yeah.
And so the next day in class, I just stood up and said, if any of you haven't been invited to a Halloween party, I'm going to have one at my house, and you're welcome. Everyone is invited. And I didn't know what would happen, but my sisters helped set it up. They were older, and
Oh, that's nice.
room, and you reach in this one, and it's worms, and it's spaghetti,
Yeah.
spaghetti, and
Yeah, I remember that.
eyeballs, and it's
Sure.
like grapes or something like that.
Yeah.
Creepy stories. But almost every kid in the class came.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was really, really, really quite the lesson. But yes, to open up with people. Say, do you ever feel like you're not good enough, or
Yeah.
if you don't have any friends, no one's going to like you, things like that, to get people to open up. It seems kooky because kids think, oh, I have to be so pretty, I have to be so smart, I have to be so awesome, and I'm not awesome. I'm not well coordinated. I'm not real attractive, and and I was funny looking too when I was young. I wasn't the handsome stud I'd into today. It's a joke against myself. I was cross-eyed, and I was real skinny, a crooked smile, and they called me bag of bones and stuff like that. But joy and relationships come from something very different from what I thought when I was little.
Yeah. Can I weave in the second question that I think is on the same topic?
Yeah.
This person is asking, does gradual exposure work? And gradual exposure is the idea if you have if you're scared of something like blood or heights, you kind of work up to facing the fear in the most extreme phase by starting small. You stay.
Good for anxiety.
It's good for anxiety. And this said, good morning. I have a doubt that gradual exposure doesn't work with me. The story is I would like to get to know people, especially girls, to try to have a relationship. One solution that has been given to me by many therapists, but also coaches, is to try to talk to strangers by giving them information and gradually talking to them. I work in a bus station, and many are bewildered and looking for information about which bus to take. The problem is that even though I give information to several people, I never establish a longer conversation long enough to stay in touch with these people. My ability seems to come exclusively to asking if they need help and giving some information. Are there any solutions to this? And the good news is there are solutions to that problem.
Yeah, again, that'd be a good one to read my book, Intimate Connections, because all about how to score, how to talk to people. I used to do an exercise that I now call rejection practice.
Yeah.
Which is getting over your fear of rejection. And there was this guy when I was a medical student. He was a younger guy, and he would live in whatever house I was living in, renting. He didn't have any money, but we'd let him live in the garage. And his name was Jeff Evans, Spider. And so if you're Jeff Evans or Spider, I'd love to contact you again after 50 years.
Yeah, we'll invite you to Feeling Good Studios. It'll be great to talk to you.
Yes, that would be so much fun. I thought he was pretty good looking, and but he was very insecure, and so he didn't know how to score. I didn't know how to score. So I said, let's just get over our fear of rejection. So I stopped going to medical school for 2 weeks. And he and I went out for 12 or 13 hours a day, just walking up to girls, which that was the word we used. I know it's politically incorrect. And, introducing ourselves and asking if we could get their phone number, which is about the lamest thing in the world. And my parents taught me if you're just genuine, sincere, girls will like you.
How'd that work out for you?
It was a big lie. Girls hate guys like that. And so we went all over Palo Alto, and then we went up and did it in San Francisco. And we each collected about 12 or 13 rejections per day. We took turns, say, go up to approach her. And we must have had at least 200 rejections apiece over that 2 weeks. And we didn't score once.
Okay.
So I later learned that it's quite different. And I wrote a book about it, Intimate Connections.
Yeah.
It's flirting is kind of an art form. It's being lighthearted, but or you can, have girls be interested in you, or guys, if you're a girl, you have to have learned to love yourself and learn to be happy alone. And that's the first part of that book, is overcoming this idea that I have to be popular, I have to be loved, have to be with people to feel happy and fulfilled. And the moment you discover that that's not true, then people don't have that power like if they reject you, it's
Who cares?
yeah,
Yeah.
who cares? And then there's even a technique you can try called rejection practice, but it's a better way than
What you did.
Spider and I did. And I've had a lot of people do this recently who were lonely and single. I've done this with several guys. Is you can approach young ladies, we'll call them now, whatever's the proper terminology for this old fart, but to ask people to reject you.
Mhm.
Say, I'm trying to get over my fear of rejection.
Right.
Would you please reject me?
Yeah.
And that is really much easier and much more fun. And I had this fellow I was working with who'd been horribly depressed and anxious for a number of years, but he was a good-looking, intelligent, really pleasant fellow. And I told him I wanted to do this, him to try to collect 10 rejections a week. And the first one he tried, went to the gym and he was climbing on a wall. They have this, I guess, an exercise you can do.
Yeah.
And simulates rock climbing. And he said there was a real attractive young lady next to him climbing. And so he said, I turned to her and said, I'm afraid of rejection and I'm trying to get over my fears. Would you mind rejecting me?
Uh-huh.
And she said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But if you would be willing to take my phone number, I'd be interested in a date. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah. And maybe,
cool thing. But there's a
yeah.
whole art form to being lighthearted and flirtatious.
Yeah, and just to build on this specifically, it sounds like you work in a bus station. You're on your gradual. You're feeling like gradual exposure is not getting anywhere because you're stuck on the step of just sincerely giving people information, and just to try to shift the tone to something a little more fun and inviting. Next time someone asks you for information, you could say something like, "Well, the train to Timbuktu is leaving at station 3 in 7 minutes, but if you want to go to Hong Kong, it's on the other side." And just start to goof around with people and get into a different wavelength that's less serious and more fun.
Yeah, that's right. Because everyone wants to have fun, and that's what Spider and I figured out. Because eventually I got a mentor. In my book Intimate Connections, I called him Bill, but his real name was Michael. But I won't tell his last name. But give anything to find him and find out what happened in his life. But he was very good at attracting the ladies.
Uh-huh.
And so I asked him if he'd teach me how. And so he kind of adopted me for about a month
It
too.
was kind of him.
Yeah, it was neat. And he told me to change the way I was dressed. And he worked in Bloomingdale's in the Stanford Mall in the men's department. And so he always dressed like a total stud. And he said, you got to get a different kind of haircut, and he maybe get some like sexy dark glasses and a sexy shirt, kind of
embrace play and sensuality.
yeah. And then we would go around, kind of meeting girls all day long, and fun things would happen. And I said to him once, could we get like 50 girls all at the same time? And he said, oh, sure, that's easy. I kept giving him these challenges. He was like a magician, kind of like, and he just worked at part-time selling clothing and lived.
He wasn't a very glamorous career.
No, and he drove around on his motor scooter, but he just went around. Well, I won't say this, but getting laid all day long. And I thought, he knows something I don't know. And so I said, well, could we get how many could we get all at the same time? And he said, well, it's really pretty unlimited. And I said, well, so why don't we do that? Well, let's have a happening and see how many people we could get. Sure, he said, just anyone who you think is really attractive, and point them out, and we'll go up and I'll show you how to do it. But we went up and he said, David and I are making a film, a movie, and we'd love to know if you'd like to be in it. And she said, oh yes, I'd love to be in your movie. And then she said, what's the name of your movie? And so I made up, really on the spur of the moment, I said, well, the name of the movie is Uptightness. And we think people are too uptight. And so we're going to get a whole bunch of people together at this cool location and have a day of not being uptight.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Here's my phone number. Call me when you get the location. And I couldn't believe it. And then we started asking people, and 100% of the women we asked got all excited, said, "Oh, please make sure you let you let me know." And eventually he ran into this young woman and said, "Oh, I just inherited a mansion at Los Altos Hills. You know, my father died or my uncle died." He said, "It's an incredible place and that you could use it for your set." And I said, "Sure." And then we made maps and
Yeah.
photocopies, and then we would hand them out, and then we would give them to a really gorgeous young woman who's with her boyfriend. And she said, "Oh, should my boyfriend come too?" And then we'd say, "No, we won't be needing him, but he can come drop you off and pick you up at the end of the day." They said, "Oh, good, good." And then we had this kind of happening, and everyone got up and said, "Well, what are we supposed to do now?" There were about 35 people came, and I invited a bunch of my buddies too, were horny and lonely and not scoring either. And we said, "We're gonna have all these gorgeous people at this location. She's so come on up." And then I said, "Well, all you have to do is, take your clothes off and just do fun things." And that's what everybody did. And there was a fellow there who came who was one of the top young photographers in America, Larry Keenan. He passed away, but he was a top photographer for commercials in like national magazines and things.
Yeah.
And he came and he took the most gorgeous pictures there. They've got me naked on a motorcycle with 3 other people on the motorcycle, and Spider,
Yeah.
Jeff,
Yeah.
rolling around in this field of flowers with this beautiful young girl who was, I think, the mayor's daughter, something like that. We're just kind of making out, and everyone just
Had a fun party, a crazy party. Yeah.
invited this elderly fellow, like, talk about elderly, I shouldn't say anything, to come, and he said he wanted to come to the uptightness party too. And then he was, because we found him on a park bench, and he was really lonely.
Yeah.
We said, "We're gonna have this party, you should
Yeah.
come to it," and he showed up, but he was sitting there kind of glumly, with his clothes on. We were all naked and dancing around, and so I told these 2 really beautiful young women, say, "Just go up and help him take his clothes off. They tell me he's being too uptight." So they went up, and he took his clothes off, and he was just delighted. But it just taught me that, people wanna play and have fun,
Totally.
and most of us were and I was just too serious. I was
Yeah.
taking myself too seriously.
Yeah.
And people are like children, they just wanna play and have fun, and that's why, Michael was so successful, because he wasn't serious, he wasn't trying to marry anyone, he wasn't trying to, do anything. It just, he kind of liked sex, and women knew that, and when he wasn't around, they said, "He's awful, I would never touch him with a 10-foot pole." And then when he showed up, suddenly he'd have his arm around them, and they'd be all excited, and off they went. But it really taught me about that there's a magic dimension to life, and if you tune into it, life becomes, radically different.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to tie it back maybe to the questioners who are kind of sincerely trying to improve their life step by step, you're on a great path. You're taking some risks and putting yourself out there, which is a great start. But just to keep going and keep learning how to be sillier and sillier, and and be a little more outrageous, and try to be a little, take your guard down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, and the theory of dating is that flirting is the person can sense if you're interested in them. So if you give someone, compliments that aren't really valid, it if they really work. Like,
Give us some examples. Yeah.
like I tell women, like, if you're, say you want to go out with this guy, and he's really handsome, somehow the women are chasing him, but he's dumb as a brick. You don't tell him he's good looking, because everyone tells him that. You look and you say, "There's something in your eyes that looks so intelligent." And I know women probably tell you this all the time. And he gets all excited because no one's ever told him that. Even his mother knows he's as stupid as a brick. And it's suddenly he decided, things like that are kind of fun and playful.
Yeah. Totally.
And so it's an art form, and it takes some failing. I did my failing before I paid my dues,
Yeah.
but it's my favorite. topic.
Yeah. So excited for all you lonely Redditors out there to go
Yeah.
play around and have fun and see where you get to, and tell us where things go as you try your experiments.
Yes, and also we have a lot of singles videos that we've been making and will be making, bringing
Right.
those ideas from my book Intimate Connections to life. And so sign up for our channel, subscribe to our channel, and look for some of the other videos. We haven't published them yet, but they're in the works and they'll be soon to arrive.
Heck yeah. All right. Thanks, Redditors. Bye.